But many are asking whether or not what mom's role was in that. And we find out today that mom is not cooperating with law enforcement.
This young person's life may have been saved as well as those he harmed if the parents had said no and not accepted the war on God's creation, on his order of creation that this entire gender dysphoria issue represents. Where did this young person get the firearms they used to do this? They were underage, weren't they? Too young to get them themselves, as far from what I was reading. Did the mother buy the firearms?
But the struggle that was clearly going on, the war within himself over his gender fluidity, he was really, really seriously struggling with this. He hated it. He hated what he had become.
Some of the responses I saw from high-profile Catholics was, we'll say, deeply disturbing. Jump immediately to gun control.
This seems to be a social problem that's going to get worse in our future. Do you see it that way as a social scientist?
I fear that it will, even though the...
By the way, my name is Joe McClane. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
We've been covering since yesterday's the tragedy of shooting story in Minneapolis today, the disgusting manifesto, demonic possessed, in my opinion, manifesto of this shooter, who clearly was at war with himself over this gender ideology. But many are asking whether or not what mom's role was in that. And we find out today that mom is not cooperating with law enforcement. Maybe that's just because her attorney said not to. I don't know. But either way, we've invited Dr. Anthony Stein, and he's back on the show for Fridays with Stein, and we'd like to get his take on this. Good morning to you, Dr. Stein. Thank you for your time.
Good morning. How are you?
Praise be to God. I am alive, although it's not feeling well, and it's Friday, so the struggle bus is real. But nonetheless, here we are. So what was your take at the news of the Minneapolis school shooting?
I mean, it was, aside from it being a horrifying event that everybody should be praying about and things, some of the responses I saw from high-profile Catholics was, we'll say, deeply disturbing. Watching one cardinal jump immediately to gun control rhetoric was, I'd say, shocking, but the cardinal in question is known as for being a politician, almost first and foremost, so wasn't surprised by that. But as for the mother not cooperating with law enforcement, there has been an open question with this entire shooting. Where did this young person get the firearms they used to do this? They were underage, weren't they? Too young to get them themselves, as far from what I was reading. So people wonder, where did they get the guns? And, well, did the mother buy the firearms? If that's the case, how did the kid get access to them? So there's a whole series of these questions. And it could be that she's not cooperating with law enforcement because she's working with her lawyers to get her situation sorted out, because she may bear some responsibility in this. There's also been other questions, too, though, about the mother. I mean, there have been some interesting articles written by some priests and things pointing out the mother's role at the parish and other things, and how sometimes these are not necessarily good signs for people. But I don't see good coming from this at all. This is only going to get, the story's going to get worse and worse as it goes on. It is absolutely going to get worse.
I don't know if you, read any of the actual manifesto or looked at any of the manifesto itself, but the struggle that was clearly going on, the war within himself over his gender fluidity, you know, he was really, really seriously struggling with this. He hated it. He hated what he had become. And he seemed to insinuate that there's pressure from the outside to sort of force him down this road. And he, even though he struggled with gender identity, he simply hated where he was and what he had become through that. And it was just, my heart was almost breaking for the guy.
Yeah, parents are told today that if your child exhibits all the signs of having gender dysphoria, that you should affirm them in this. You should support them. That loving them means supporting them and walking them through and accepting them in their delusion. That's not true. We know that's not true. This young person's life may have been saved as well as those he harmed if the parents had said no and not accepted the war on God's creation, on his order of creation that this entire gender dysphoria issue represents. And unfortunately, people lack the courage to do that today. And we are told from very high-profile people in the church, very, very high-profile people, that we should be sympathetic to the people, not just sympathetic because they're made in the image and likeness of God, and we should be concerned for their souls, but sympathetic and accept them and affirm them. These are churchmen. Men like James Martin bear, I think, responsibility in this problem. Not a huge amount of responsibility. This person, he probably never met the man, but he himself advocates for this. He tells us that the church was wrong. He has said on the record the church was wrong, that the Bible is wrong, that St. Paul got it wrong on the homosexuality stuff. There comes a point where you have to hold people in these positions accountable, and they're not getting held accountable. No one in any position of authority has silenced James Martin, and it's time. It's absolutely time to do this. I'm not saying James Martin was the one who pulled the trigger. Maybe that young man never heard of James Martin, for all I know. But churchmen have been playing this game of affirming this diabolical issue, just affirming it and playing along with it. It's time to stop. It really is time to stop. The church must stand against this stuff. It is an attack on the order of creation. It's a misuse of science. It's everything that the church should be standing against. It wrapped up in one single issue. But for whatever reason, they lack the courage to do it.
Okay, so one of the issues about the church standing up that I would love to see is this whole, like, you're not allowed to take if your kid's telling you he's got or she's got gender identity problems, you can't take them to someone who's going to help them sort that out in a positive and good way, a healthy way. You're not allowed to tell them that these things are bad and you're not supposed to be doing that. There's like the psychiatry aspect to this is being completely politicized in the wrong direction, weaponized, I would dare I say, in the wrong direction, which is furthering the problem, digging the hole deeper rather than making it better. Don't you think the bishops, like, shouldn't that be something that the bishops speak out against, like the injustice of that? Like, you're not allowed to tell people, hey, this is sinful, this is wrong, and it's hurting your psychology, it's hurting you as a person, it's hurting you spiritually. The bishops have to take a stand on that, even if it means, I would argue, even if it means they get lambasted by society, or dare I say even arrested by society. Like in Canada, for instance, it would be jail time for them. So shouldn't they have to risk that to speak the truth?
Yes. I mean, what's the reason that bishops and cardinals wear red? Do you know why they wear red, Joe?
For martyrdom.
Yeah.
To remind them.
And martyrdom can take many forms. And souls are on the line, which I guess these days is just this abstract idea to many of them. So maybe they'll respond better to lives are on the line. Maybe they can't respond because they can't wrap their head around the eternal consequences of what they do, but there are certainly temporal consequences for their inactions. And at the very least, they should be concerned with that, at the very least. But they should, of course, first and foremost, be concerned with the salvation of souls.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think anything's going to change until these bishops make the decision to just go all in and not stop holding back and stop playing nice.
You'd think they'd made that decision when they entered the seminary, but because the time to make your decision to go all in for Christ as someone with holy orders is well before you become a bishop. We'll just say that it should be, every Easter when you're reaffirming your baptismal promises, but failing that, they should have made that decision long before they were even in seminary, but they don't. And I cannot understand why what the thinking is of anyone who, we have been told by the saints that those who teach in the faith will be held to a higher standard than others. Pretty sure Jesus even says that in the gospel somewhere, that those who have positions of authority in the church will be held to a higher standard. So I don't understand why someone would treat being a bishop as a managerial post in Catholic Incorporated instead of actually worrying about the salvation of souls with fear and trembling going to work every morning instead of looking at it as something where they have to play nice in the world.
Your PhD is in social science, if I'm not mistaken. And, there's a trend. 1% of the population in America right now identifies as trans. I think it's like 1% of America right now. And that seems to be getting worse. The vast majority of that is sub 35 years old. And there's a whole crime spree now related to this trans community. There's a hatred, a vitriol that is under sort of under the water line here in this community that seems to be getting worse. This seems to be a social problem that's going to get worse in our future. Do you see it that way as a social scientist?
I fear that it will, even though the backlash is growing in the broader culture. Most people, it seems, are tired of this stuff. You've seen attitudes, according to the polling data, of everyday Americans, at least, turning sour towards everything LGBTQ, everything about it. The approval numbers are down, support for gay marriage, all that stuff is down. But young people are being caught up in the social contagion, because it is a social contagion. It's because the young people, we were all young at one point. We all remember the pressures and getting caught up in bad ideas, but this is the quintessential bad idea to get caught up in. And then people trip over themselves to affirm people in this bad idea. This isn't like, you come home from work and your kid's got a mohawk, right? And suddenly you discover they have pretty terrible taste in rock music, right? We've got a lip piercing, stuff that they'll grow out of eventually. This is something a little different than this. This is something as bad as what I just described is. This is infinitely worse, because there's an entire cottage industry about exploiting people for financial gain, for inflicting medical procedures on them, things that they will spend the rest of their lives on drugs for. And then, of course, the elevated chance that they will just remove themselves from this mortal coil with a hat tip to the YouTube side of your broadcast.
Well, I got to tell you, any attack on who you are as a person made in the image and likeness of God is a spiritual combat that you're not ready for, because the ramifications, the consequences are profound and eternal. We can't allow the attack on our identity, because it is God-given. We are made in his image and likeness, and that is who we are at our most fundamental level. So this should not exist in society, and as good Christians, we shouldn't allow it to exist in society. Politicians, clergy, or otherwise, we should stand up against this. It's not good for them, it's not good for society, and we shouldn't tolerate it. But let's pray for the repose of the souls of those kids that innocently lost their life. And there's still a little girl, I think her name is Sophia, if I'm not mistaken, 12 years old, in critical condition. She's hanging on by a thread. Keep her in your prayers as well.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here, because you don't want to miss anything.